The rain came down harder than Emma Carter expected, turning the office windows into blurred mirrors as she shut down her computer and stood from her desk. Feeling that familiar ache of another long day done alone, it was nearly 10. The building, quiet except for the low hum of lights and the distant echo of a closing elevator. And she knew she had stayed too late again, finishing work that never seemed to end. Emma grabbed her coat and bag, walked through the empty hallway, and locked the office door behind her, breathing out as if the night might finally let her rest. Outside, the parking lot looked empty and cold, the yellow lights reflecting on wet asphalt, and she reached for her phone to order a ride when she heard her name spoken gently from behind. She turned, startled, and saw Lucas Bennett standing a few steps away. His hands in the pockets of his jacket, rain darkening his hair, his expression careful and unsure. Lucas was her boss's son, younger than her by several years. Someone she only knew through polite greetings at company dinners and brief conversations in passing. And seeing him here this late felt strange. He explained that his father had asked him to check if she was still working and make sure she got home safely because of the weather. And though Emma hesitated, feeling the weight of what was proper and what was not, the rain grew heavier and the lot felt more empty by the second, so she thanked him and followed him to his car. The drive began quietly, the sound of rain tapping against the roof filling the space between them as the car moved through quiet. Streets lined with dark houses and glowing streetlights, and Emma kept her eyes on the road ahead, trying to treat the moment as nothing more than a kind favor. Lucas did not turn on the radio, did not check his phone, and his focus on the road felt intense, as if he were holding something back, and Emma sensed it almost at once. She tried to ease the silence by asking about his studies and his plans. After finishing school, and he answered politely but briefly, his voice calm yet distant, and the answers felt practiced, like things he had said many times without meaning much. As the car turned onto a longer stretch of road, the rain slowed slightly, and the quiet grew heavier, pressing on Emma's chest in a way she could not explain, as if the night itself were waiting for something to happen. Oh. Lucas finally spoke. Again, his voice lower, asking if he could say something honest without making things awkward. And Emma, surprised by the seriousness in his tone, nodded, unsure of what to expect. He told her he had noticed her long before she ever noticed him, not in a dramatic way, but in quiet moments when she stayed late to fix problems that were not hers, when she spoke kindly to people who were stressed, when she carried herself with calm even when the work seemed to drain her. And as he spoke, Emma felt a tightness in her throat because those were moments she thought no one saw. He said he knew she worked for his father and that this made everything complicated and that he did not want anything from her, not now or ever. But he could not carry the words anymore without letting them out, and the honesty in his voice made Emma's hands tremble in her lap. She realized then that this was not a careless crush or a bold move, but something deeper and more thoughtful, and that made it harder to hear. The car slowed at a red light, the glow casting soft shadows across Lucas's face. And Emma saw nerves there, not confidence, and she felt the weight of responsibility pressed down on her, reminding her of her job, her place, and the careful life she had built to protect herself from mess and pain. She wanted to speak, to stop him, to end the moment before it crossed into something she could not take back. But the words stayed stuck as the light changed and the car moved forward again. The road ahead stretched dark and quiet, and Emma understood with sudden clarity that this short drive had already changed something inside her, even if nothing more was said, because being seen in that way, even once, could shake the strongest walls. As the car continued toward her neighborhood, Emma stared out at the passing lights, her mind racing. knowing that whatever came next would not be simple, and that this night, which began like any other long workday, was now something she would never forget. The car moved deeper into the quiet streets, the rain easing into a soft drizzle as the windshield wipers kept a steady rhythm. And Emma felt her heartbeat match their pace while Lucas kept his eyes fixed on the road, his earlier words still hanging between them like a question that had no easy answer. She tried to steady herself, reminding herself that this was just a conversation. But nothing had truly happened, but the silence felt heavy, filled with meaning. And it pressed on her thoughts as she wondered how something so simple as a ride home could turn into a moment this intense. Lucas broke the quiet again, his voice careful, almost unsure, as he said he needed her to understand that his feelings were not sudden, that they had grown slowly over time while he watched her balance strength and kindness without asking for attention, and Emma listened, torn between stopping him and letting him finish because part of her needed to hear the truth fully to know how to respond. He told her there were many times he wanted to speak but chose silence instead, respecting the space between them, respecting her work and her life. And that restraint made his confession feel heavier, more real than any bold statement could have. Emma's thoughts raced as she realized how long she had been moving through her days unseen, focused on work, on survival, on keeping things together after her own past disappointments, and how unexpected it felt to be noticed by someone who asked for nothing in return. The road curved through a small neighborhood, houses glowing warmly behind rain-covered windows. And the contrast made the moment feel even more personal, like something that should not exist in the open, but somehow did. Lucas admitted that he did not expect her to feel the same, that he was not trying to change anything between them. But he needed her to know because carrying the feeling alone had begun to weigh on him, and his honesty struck Emma harder than any dramatic gesture could have. She turned toward him, searching his face, and saw no pressure there, only vulnerability. And that softened her defenses even as it deepened her confusion. Emma asked him why now, why tonight? And Lucas explained that seeing her walk out alone so late, standing in the rain with her phone in her hand, made him realize how often she handled everything by herself. And that realization pushed him to speak before the moment passed forever. The car slowed at another light, and the pause felt long, giving Emma too much time to think about the risks, about her job, about how easily lives could become complicated by feelings that arrived at the wrong time. She reminded herself that she was older, that she had learned how quickly hope could turn into regret. And yet she could not deny the warmth spreading in her chest, the painful comfort of being understood. Lucas's voice grew quieter as he said that no matter what she said next, he would respect her, that he would never let this affect her work or her place at the company. And the promise in his words eased some of her fear while deepening the emotional weight of the moment. Emma felt torn between two truths, the one that told her to protect her life as it was, and the one that whispered that connections like this did not come often. And the struggle showed in her expression, even as she tried to remain calm. The light turned green, the car moved forward, and Emma realized she had reached a point where silence was no longer possible, where she would have to respond not just as an employee or an adult, but as a human being with a heart that had not stopped feeling after all. As the streets grew quieter and her building drew closer, Emma knew that whatever she said would shape what came next. And the weight of that choice settled heavily on her, making the rest of the drive feel both fast and endless at the same time. Lucas slowed the car to a stop near a small park, the kind of place that usually felt empty and forgotten at night. And the misty rain had softened the streets so that the world outside the car felt distant, almost like a dream. Emma's hands rested on her lap, her fingers fidgeting with the strap of her bag as she tried to make sense of everything Lucas had just confessed. and she realized that the ride had shifted from something ordinary into a moment charged with truth she could not ignore. The soft hum of the engine filled the space between them as Lucas turned slightly to glance at her, his eyes searching for a reaction she was not sure she could give, and the tension was thick, almost suffocating, but not in a way that demanded fear, more like the weight of honesty pressing against a delicate balance. She knew immediately that this moment was important, that decisions did not have to be made now, but recognition of their emotions was unavoidable. Lucas's voice broke the silence, quiet and careful. As he admitted, he had admired her from afar for years, noticing how she carried herself, the way she remained calm when things fell apart, and how she managed responsibilities that belonged to others without ever asking for credit or sympathy, and Emma felt her chest tighten, her mind flashing back to late nights at the office when she thought no one noticed. He said he did not want to interfere, that he knew the rules and the boundaries, that he would never pressure her to feel something she did not. But he could no longer hide the truth. And the sincerity in his voice made her heart ache because it was free of pretense or expectation. Emma listened, taking in each word, the honesty and restraint painting a picture of a young man who cared deeply but wisely. And she realized that emotions could be expressed without drama, and yet still leave an impact stronger than any impulsive gesture. She looked at him then, really looked, noticing the tension in his jaw, the slight hesitation before every word. And it struck her that Lucas had chosen honesty over comfort, a bravery she could not ignore. For a few moments, neither spoke, the engine's hum and the occasional patter of rain filling the silence. And Emma's mind raced as she considered the complexity of their connection, the respect and care that made it impossible to simply walk away emotionally, even if she knew they had to keep things proper. She thought about her life, her routines, the careful walls she had built around her feelings, and how those walls were cracking not because of recklessness, but because someone had seen her fully and acknowledged her presence in a way she had not allowed herself to accept. She told Lucas gently that she cared for him, not in a way that promised romance or crossed boundaries, but in a way that recognized his courage and honesty, and that acknowledgement, though careful, carried as much weight as any declaration of love could. Lucas nodded, understanding that the truth of emotions did not always require action. And the relief in his expression was quiet but visible, a release from the tension of holding feelings in alone. Emma felt a strange mixture of relief and sadness, because while the honesty had freed something inside both of them, it also marked a line they could not cross, a boundary set by circumstance and respect. The rain continued to fall lightly, soft on the car roof, and the park around them felt suspended in time. A bubble where confessions could be made and feelings could be acknowledged without consequences, yet felt fully. They sat there, the air thick with emotion but calm in its steadiness. Emma realized that moments like this were rare. That connection did not always need to result in action to be meaningful, and that sometimes seeing and understanding another person fully was enough to shift the course of one's thoughts and feelings. Lucas reached slowly to adjust the mirrors and then focused back on the road, his hands steady, but his eyes still showing vulnerability, and Emma understood that the night had changed them both, leaving them with a memory that was intimate, serious, and honest without crossing lines that mattered. When she finally said thank you for his words, for his courage, and for acknowledging her without expectation, Lucas smiled softly, a mixture of relief and quiet longing in his gaze, and she knew that the ride home had become more than just transportation. It had become a space of truth that neither of them could forget. As the engine hummed again and the car began moving toward her street, Emma's mind was alive with reflections, understanding that this encounter, this confession, had shifted something inside her, had made her see both herself and Lucas in new ways, and that even without promises, even without romantic conclusions, the honesty they shared had left an impression that would linger, shaping how they saw each other, how they respected each other, and how quietly powerful a moment of real truth could be in a life often filled with routine and restraint. Asterisk, the days after that night moved quickly. But for Emma, they were heavy with unspoken thoughts and quiet reflection. At the office, everything appeared, normal emails piled up. Meetings were held. Her boss joked about deadlines as usual, but beneath the surface, the weight of what had happened in the car lingered, subtle yet impossible to ignore. Emma found herself thinking about Lucas constantly, replaying his words, the way he had looked at her, the careful honesty in his voice, and the way the ride had made her feel both seen and vulnerable at the same time. She avoided him at first, walking past his desk with purposeful focus, answering questions quickly, pretending everything was routine. But even the briefest glance in his direction carried the memory of that confession, and it made her pulse quicken in ways she could not explain. Then one afternoon, a small envelope appeared on her desk, plain and unmarked, with a single line written inside. "I hope you're okay." No signature, no explanation, just that quiet, thoughtful note. And Emma felt her chest tighten with the reminder that someone had cared enough to reach out without demanding anything in return. She folded it carefully, slipped it into her bag, and went about her day with a strange mix of comfort and tension, realizing that life had shifted subtly but irreversibly. Over the next week, she noticed Lucas watching her from a distance at the office. Small gestures that carried unspoken meanings, how he would open a door when she approached, pause to make sure she had everything she needed, or give her a brief understanding look during hectic moments, and each action reminded her of the night in the car, keeping the memory alive without any words exchanged. Emma's mind often wandered back to that misty night. The rain soft against the car roof, the hum of the engine, and the quiet park where they had shared a moment that was both intimate and proper. And she understood that some connections did not need to be acted upon to leave a lasting impact. She thought about how honesty and recognition could be more powerful than romance or drama. How being seen fully by someone else could shift the way she understood herself. And how fragile yet important such moments could be in the ordinary rhythm of life. Lucas did not push her, did not ask for anything beyond acknowledgement, and that restraint made every small interaction meaningful, leaving her to navigate her own emotions carefully, learning that attraction and care could exist in balance with responsibility and respect. Emma realized that part of growing, part of being truly seen, was to hold emotions without letting them dictate impulsive actions. And she began to understand that the night's confession was a gift in itself, reminder that human connection could be deep, tender, and honest without crossing boundaries or causing harm. Sometimes, in quiet moments at her desk, she would glance at the window and imagine the streets they had driven through, the park they had paused in, and the car's hum, and she felt a mixture of longing, reflection, and gratitude, knowing that, while life had to continue as usual, she carried something meaningful with her now. A memory that reminded her of her strength and her ability to be seen. Days turned into weeks, and Emma grew more comfortable holding this truth quietly, understanding that some connections were not meant to be loud or public, but private and deeply affecting, shaping her inner life without creating scandal or discomfort. Lucas continued to act with the same careful consideration, polite, attentive, and Emma respected that space, realizing that the real bond between them was built on trust, honesty, and restraint, not impulsive decisions. The office routine, once monotonous, now had layers she could feel under the surface. Interactions carrying subtle emotional depth she had not noticed before. And even the mundane aspects of work became tinged with significance, reminding her that life's ordinary moments could be colored by extraordinary honesty. Emma never spoke to Lucas about that night again, understanding that some confessions were meant to exist in memory rather than action, that they could shape understanding and respect without needing to evolve into romance or drama, and she found a quiet peace in that knowledge. She carried the weight of his words gently, allowing herself to reflect on what it meant to be noticed, to be admired honestly, and to be valued without expectation. And that understanding gave her a sense of empowerment she had not realized she lacked. Even in moments of stress, when deadlines loomed and meetings dragged on, she remembered the car, the rain, and Lucas's voice. And it gave her strength and clarity, a quiet anchor in the chaos of daily life. She began to see people differently, noticing small gestures of kindness and honesty in ways she had overlooked before. Understanding that connection could be subtle, patient, and deeply impactful, and that recognizing such moments was as important as experiencing them fully. Emma realized that sometimes love and care existed not in dramatic declarations or physical closeness, but in observation, acknowledgement, and respect. And holding that truth shaped the way she moved through her life, her work, and her relationships. By the time the month passed, the memory of that night remained vivid but comfortable. A quiet turning point she could return to whenever she needed reassurance that she was seen, valued, and understood, and that such moments, though fleeting, had the power to change the way one felt about themselves and others. Emma had grown, not in romance, not in scandal, but in the subtle, powerful understanding that honesty, care, and observation could be transformative. And she carried that knowledge forward, quietly shaping her world, her choices, and her heart. Knowing that some connections were meant to linger in memory, unseen by others, yet deeply felt, forever leaving their mark without ever needing more than recognition.